On the face of it, this is a dead simple story.
Oh, hold on.
Stephen Colbert declaring war on Trump, on the FCC, on big media, on his own corporation.
You know who is not one of my guests tonight? That's Texas State Representative James Talarico.
Monday night, he rails against his network, CBS, for censoring him and his Democrat guest on his own show.
But we were told in no uncertain terms by our network's lawyers, who called us directly, that we could not have him on the broadcast.
And cue the outrage.
But it sounds to me like there was a little intimidation involved.
CBS basically running in fear of a lawsuit from the FCC under Brendan Carr and Donald Trump.
The Trump administration is going to continue to weaponize all the instruments of the state that it can to try and interfere in the midterm elections.
And this is only spiraling from there. CBS puts out a statement saying Colbert got it wrong. The Late Show was not prohibited by CBS from broadcasting the interview, and those were the words you just saw Colbert bagging up like dog poop the very next chance he got.
And I was ready to let the whole thing go. Until a few hours ago, when my group chat blowed up.
So look, I'm here to tell you, both sides aren't quite capturing the whole truth. There are things CBS isn't exactly tackling head on, but also when Colbert says stuff like this.
So I cannot show you any form of James Talarico. I can't interview James Talarico. I can't show any pictures of James Talarico. I'm not even sure I can say the words James Talarico.
That's not quite right, and I'll show you why. So just warning you, this is a story about ancient rules and who they apply to. The core of it is kind of boring, but I think I can summarize it pretty quickly, and then it gets really interesting.
It's the FCC's most time-honored rule right after no nipples at the Super Bowl.
So the reason Stephen Colbert says he was forbidden from interviewing Texas State Senate candidate James Talarico, a Democrat, is this really old rule originating in the 1920s about equal opportunities or equal time.
Okay, it's an old FCC rule that says if a show has a candidate on during an election, they have to have all that candidate's opponents on as well.
So already, yes, but not quite. Equal time is about ensuring a level playing field during elections, evening out everyone's access to the airwaves. So Colbert is telling two slightly different stories here. Earlier, he said he wasn't allowed to have James Talarico on the show, but here he's acknowledging what the rule actually says. But there's another big caveat Colbert doesn't mention, and that's what's written right here. Equal time does not require a station to provide opposing candidates with programs identical to the initiating candidate. Translation, any given show does not necessarily have to interview all candidates just because it interviews one. Case in point, when Kamala Harris made a cameo on Saturday Night Live the weekend before the 2024 election, equal time in this case didn't mean Trump must also have been given the same cameo in order to avoid violating FCC rules. What NBC did instead was give the Trump campaign airtime during sports programming the next day.
Just remember, Kamala and her friends broke it. I'll fix it. Most important election in the history of our country. Go and vote.
The station is required to provide equal opportunity for opponents for that same office to also have the opportunity. It doesn't mean they have to be on the same show. The time can be provided in other ways.
So what CBS is saying is there's no prohibition in place.
And this doesn't just affect interviews. The rules forbid any candidate appearance, including by voice or picture. That's right, I am absolutely not allowed to show a photo of Texas State Representative James Talarico.
CBS is saying, no, what we did was tell you what the rules were and how you might get around or satisfy them. Now, to be fair, we don't know what those other options were. Maybe CBS insisted that the only way forward was for Colbert to interview the other candidates besides James Talarico. But I just wanted to be clear about what the rules actually are, because the reason that's important is that there's one key aspect of the equal time rule that may be changing, which is the thing that has caused this whole mess to begin with. There's a fairly famous FCC ruling that goes back 20 years from that time when Jay Leno interviewed Arnold Schwarzenegger. This was while he was governor of California, but a few weeks before voters would go back to the polls to decide whether he should stay governor. His challenger in that election, Democrat Phil Angelides, who argued that he was entitled to 15 minutes and 41 seconds of airtime as a direct consequence of Schwarzenegger getting that exact amount of airtime on The Tonight Show. And the type of show matters here. An entertainment show. That's important because there's a major exception to the FCC's equal time rule, and that's for news. The thinking there being, if an election candidate does something that is newsworthy, so let's say they rob a bank, it's a bit silly to then require those news organizations to give equal time to every other candidate in that election, right? Like, what are you supposed to say? Here's this other guy. He didn't rob a bank today.
If candidate A makes big news today and candidate B is silent, you can't be required to go and figure out some news to make up for candidate B to make it equal.
And ultimately, the FCC decided in Jay Leno's favor that parts of The Tonight Show are newsworthy enough to qualify as news. Specifically, news interviews conducted on that program are exempt from equal opportunities. So this is why Colbert is upset that CBS has backed him into this corner of equal time.
We looked, and we can't find one example of this rule being enforced for any talk show interview, not only for my entire late night career, but for anyone's late night career going back to the 1960s.
Except, enter Brendan Carr. On Donald Trump's first day on the job last year, on Inauguration Day, Trump made Carr the chair of the FCC. Basically, broadcast God. And Trump's always been clear about how he intended for Carr to wage war on late night TV.
If they're 97% against, they give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. It would be up to Brendan Carr.
Carr has taken up that battle. The suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live last year, when he made jokes about the death of Charlie Kirk. Carr was an intimidating force for ABC.
They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
There's no doubt in my mind that Brendan Carr's political ideology influences how he's running the FCC, because you will see him take dramatically different positions depending on whether an issue or a broadcaster or something that's said aligns with his political viewpoints or contradicts his political viewpoints.
And as before, but now in the Colbert case, Carr only needs to hint at a threat to make it real. In January, he writes this online. For years, legacy TV networks assumed that their late night and daytime talk shows qualify as bona fide news programs, even when motivated by purely partisan political purposes. Then attached, there's this public notice where he dangles an implied threat. The FCC has not been presented with any evidence that the interview portion of any late night or daytime television talk show program on air presently would qualify for the bona fide news exemption. That's a fairly long way of saying it'd be a real shame if all of a sudden the rule you know and love were to change on you and change the way you choose your guests.
The FCC issues a memo, not a formal rulemaking, literally just a piece of paper that says, we're going to interpret bona fide in a little stricter sense. And if we think there's any political motivation to the program, we're not going to allow you to qualify under the exemption.
In this letter, Carr said he was thinking about dropping the exception for talk shows because he said some of them were motivated by partisan purposes. Well, sir, you're chairman of the FCC, so FCCU.
So now you understand why Colbert feels wronged, why he feels the FCC is being unfair, but also why he's so bitter about his own network, CBS, putting the brakes on Monday's interview.
For the record, I'm not even mad. I really don't want an adversarial relationship with the network. I'm just so surprised that this giant global corporation would not stand up to these bullies.
The irony here is that, strictly speaking, this specific case isn't actually even about Democrats versus Republicans, because James Talarico is competing in a Democratic primary. So equal time would theoretically only be handed out here to other Democrats in that election. But what this really is, Colbert would argue, and frankly, what's fairly obvious, is that this is part of a broader Trump administration campaign against an institution that has been fervently anti-Trump. Trump has had his sights set on late-night TV for a long time, even going back to his first term. This article's from 2017, Trump invoking the equal time rule as an avenue of attack, and posting on Twitter. Late-night hosts are dealing with the Democrats for their very unfunny and repetitive material, always anti-Trump. Should we get equal time? And then again, using this very specific language. Republicans and me should be given equal time on TV. Again, that's from almost 10 years ago. So, look, there are a few takeaways. It's not true that it's breaking FCC rules to have James Talarico appear on Stephen Colbert's show. But the FCC does have the power to make life very difficult for CBS. It's also true that there are financial reasons that people who run CBS may want to stay in the good graces of a US president unafraid of punishing enemies. And ultimately, the change for you and me is that the FCC, enforcing rules in this new way, is imposing a constraint on free speech. And we don't know how much further those constraints will go.